In some American towns, the warning doesn't come from police reports or travel guides. It comes from the people who live there. The cashier at the gas station, the guy sitting outside the diner, the neighbor who's seen the town change over the years. And they'll often tell you the same thing. Don't stop. Just keep driving. Not because these places are haunted, but because of what happened after the jobs left. The factories closed or the drugs moved in. From abandoned river towns to chemical deserts and crime-scarred steel cities, these are 10 American towns locals say outsiders should avoid. Number 10, Chester, Pennsylvania. Just south of Philadelphia sits the small city of Chester, Pennsylvania. On a map, it doesn't look that different from the dozens of old industrial towns scattered across the Northeast. But locals will tell you this one has a very different reputation. Chester was once a busy shipbuilding and manufacturing hub along the Delaware River. In the early 20th century, factories and refineries brought steady jobs and a growing population. But like many Rust Belt cities, that economy slowly collapsed. Plants shut down, jobs disappeared, and thousands of residents moved away. Today, the population is less than half of what it was at its peak, and large parts of the city struggle with poverty, abandoned buildings, and limited economic opportunity. Over time, Chester developed a reputation for violent crime. In recent years, homicide rates here have run far above the national average. In 2022 alone, the city recorded 18 homicides, roughly 55 per 100,000 residents. If you don't have a reason to be there, just keep driving. To be fair, like any city, not every block is the same. There are schools, churches, and families trying to hold things together. But decades of industrial decline and disinvestment have left deep scars here. And for many locals, Chester is still a place they'd rather avoid, especially after dark. Number 9, Trona, California. Population, about 1,600 today, down sharply from several thousand in the 1980s. Distance to nearest city, 120 miles. Air quality rating, among the worst in California. These numbers tell you something about Trona, but they don't tell you everything. Out in the Mojave Desert, more than 2 hours from the nearest major city, sits this isolated company town. From a distance, it almost looks like a movie set. White dust covering the ground, rusted industrial structures, and long, empty roads stretching into the desert. But Trona isn't a film location. People still live here. The town was built in the early 1900s around large chemical and mineral plants. For decades, those plants provided stable, well-paying jobs, and Trona functioned like many classic American company towns. Then came automation, downsizing, layoffs. The surrounding dry lake beds and chemical operations leave a fine white dust that coats everything. On windy days, that dust blows through the streets, giving the entire town a stark, almost post-apocalyptic look. Some locals say visitors underestimate just how remote the place really is. There are long stretches of highway with nothing but desert in every direction. And if something goes wrong out here, help can be a very long way away. Number 8, McKeesport, Pennsylvania. I tell people I'm from Pittsburgh, says Maria, a 42-year-old nurse who grew up in McKeesport. It's just easier that way. When you say McKeesport, people get this look on their face. That look, she says, is a mix of pity and concern. A century ago, McKeesport was one of the busiest steel towns in western Pennsylvania. Mills lined the river, factories ran around the clock. The population climbed past 50,000. Today, fewer than 18,000 people remain. When the steel industry collapsed in the late 20th century, McKeesport lost its economic foundation. Entire neighborhoods emptied out. Storefronts went dark. Crime rates climbed. Residents here face violent crime rates about 19% higher than the national average, and property crime rates 37% higher. The total crime rate is approximately 46 incidents per 1,000 residents. The opioid crisis hit hard here too. Emergency rooms see overdoses regularly. and some blocks now have more abandoned houses than occupied ones. There are still good people here. Maria says, "My mom still lives in the house I grew up in, but I wouldn't walk through certain parts of town at night, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anyone passing through." Number 7, Keystone, West Virginia. The mountains close in around Keystone like walls. Narrow roads wind through hollows where sunlight barely reaches the valley floor. Old company houses cling to hillsides, many with sagging roofs and broken windows. The few businesses that remain, a convenience store, a dollar shop, feel temporary, like they're just waiting for permission to close. This is coal country, or it was. In the early 1900s, Keystone was one of the largest coal communities in southern West Virginia, packed with miners, company houses, and busy commercial streets. The mines provided steady work, and the town thrived. But coal is a boom and bust industry, and Keystone busted hard. When the mines began shutting down in the late 20th century, the jobs disappeared almost overnight. Families left, businesses closed. The population collapsed from thousands to just a few hundred. Southern West Virginia now reports some of the highest overdose rates in the country. In some counties, over 100 deaths per 100,000 residents annually. Keystone sits in the heart of that crisis. Some locals say there's simply nothing here anymore. No jobs, no opportunities, no reason to stop unless you live nearby. Keystone isn't dangerous in the way big cities sometimes are. It's something else entirely, a place that slowly lost its purpose when the coal industry disappeared and never really found a new one. Number 6, Port Arthur, Texas. Drive into Port Arthur on Highway 73, and the first thing you notice isn't the town. It's the refineries. Massive industrial complexes rise on both sides of the road. Towers of steel and pipe flare, stacks burning orange against the sky, storage tanks the size of city blocks. The smell of petroleum hangs in the air, thick and chemical. This is one of the most heavily industrialized corridors in the United States, and Port Arthur sits right in the middle of it. For decades, those refineries were the backbone of the local economy, providing thousands of well-paying jobs. But over time, automation and industry shifts reduced that workforce. The population peaked in 1960 at nearly 66,000 people and has now declined to approximately 54,000 today. What makes Port Arthur stand out isn't just economic decline, it's the environmental cost. Air quality concerns have been debated here for years. Studies have linked refinery emissions to higher rates of asthma and respiratory illness in nearby neighborhoods. Some residents say the constant industrial presence affects everything from the smell in the air to long-term health risks. The city has also struggled with repeated flooding. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey dumped over 60 inches of rain, submerging entire neighborhoods and forcing thousands to evacuate. Talk to people from nearby towns, and you'll sometimes hear a simple piece of advice. There's not much reason to stop in Port Arthur. It's a place shaped by heavy industry, and for many locals, that industrial legacy has come with a cost. Number 5, Wellston, Ohio. Median household income, $55,000. Poverty rate, 34%. Population decline since 1980, around 40%. Number of major employers, 0. This is Wellston, Ohio. In the hills of southeastern Ohio, this small town once thrived on coal mines and brick factories. At its peak in the early 1900s, Wellston was a busy industrial community with a strong local economy. But as coal declined and manufacturing moved elsewhere, those jobs slowly disappeared. Today, Wellston's population has fallen to around 5,600, and many parts of town show clear signs of long-term economic hardship. Like much of Appalachian Ohio, the region has been devastated by the opioid crisis. In 2020, Jackson County, where Wellston is located, recorded an overdose death rate of 71.5 per 100,000, more than double the national average. Empty storefronts line the main street. Aging homes need repair. New businesses are rare. Some residents of nearby cities say there's simply not much left here. Few job opportunities, limited services, little reason for outsiders to stop. Wellston isn't a place known for big headlines. It's the kind of town that faded slowly as its industries disappeared and never quite found a way back. Number 4, Marianna, Arkansas. Marianna, the downtown cafe, closed in 2019. The hardware store followed in 2020. By 2022, nearly half the storefronts along Main Street sat empty. There's just nothing here anymore, says James, a 67-year-old retired farmer who's lived in Marianna his entire life. Kids grow up and leave. They don't come back. In eastern Arkansas, not far from the Mississippi River, Marianna once served as a local commercial center for the surrounding countryside. Cotton farms and related industries provided jobs, and the town functioned as a hub for rural communities in the region. But over the decades, farming became more mechanized. Fewer workers were needed. Younger residents left in search of better opportunities. The population declined from over 6,000 in the 1980s to around 3,400 today. Marianna now has one of the higher poverty rates in Arkansas, approximately 30%, about 3 times more than the national average. The median household income is just $24,000. Crime rates have fluctuated. In recent years, violent crime in Lee County, where Marianna is located, has been roughly double the national average. Some residents say certain parts of town feel noticeably different after dark. I wouldn't tell someone to come here looking for work, James says. There isn't any. And I wouldn't tell them to come here for a visit either. There's nothing to see. Marianna isn't known for a single dramatic collapse. Instead, it's a town shaped by decades of slow economic decline, population loss, and limited opportunity, the kind of place many locals say outsiders simply have no reason to visit. Number 3, Beattyville, Kentucky. In 2012, the U.S. Census Bureau released data that gave Beattyville an unwanted distinction: the lowest median household income of any town in America. The number? $12,361. National media descended on this small Appalachian town, cameras in hand, looking for poverty porn. What they found was more complicated. Deep in the hills of eastern Kentucky, surrounded by forests and winding mountain roads, Beattyville looks peaceful at first glance, but beneath that calm exterior is a place that has struggled for decades. The town was once tied closely to the coal industry and small-scale manufacturing. Those jobs helped support local families and kept the town alive. But as coal declined and factories shut down, the local economy began to collapse. Young people left for bigger cities, businesses closed their doors, the population steadily shrank. Today, more than 44% of Beattyville's residents live below the poverty line. The median household income has risen slightly since 2012 to around $38,000, but remains far below both state and national averages. Like many towns across Appalachia, the area has also been deeply affected by the opioid crisis. Lee County, where Beattyville is located, has reported overdose rates significantly above the state average. For visitors, the town can feel isolated and economically drained, with little activity outside, a few small businesses and government offices. Some residents from nearby areas say there's simply no reason to stop here unless you live in the region. Beattyville isn't known for big city violence or dramatic headlines. Instead, it represents something quieter, a small Appalachian town that lost its industries, lost its people, and never really recovered. Number 2, Niland, California. The heat shimmers off the highway, exit signs point to towns that barely exist anymore, and then you see it, Niland, California, population 1,338. Near the southeastern edge of California, just miles from the Salton Sea, sits this small desert town. From the highway, it looks like many forgotten desert communities, scattered mobile homes, abandoned buildings, and dirt roads leading into emptiness. But Niland has something most dying towns don't have: Slab City. Just a few miles away sits what some call the last free place in America, an off-grid squatter community built on the concrete slabs of an old military base. It's home to drifters, artists, retirees living in RVs, and people trying to disappear. No rules, no rent, no running water. The town grew in the early 1900s as a railroad stop and agricultural center. For decades, farming and the nearby Salton Sea tourism kept the local economy afloat. But when the Salton Sea began to dry up and turn toxic in the 1970s and 80s, tourism collapsed. Farms struggled with water scarcity, and the town slowly emptied out. Today, many homes are abandoned trailers. The main street shows little sign of commerce. And the nearby Salton Sea, once a booming resort destination, is now a toxic, shrinking body of water surrounded by dead fish and decaying shoreline buildings. Some locals say the combination of poverty, isolation, and the Slab City crowd creates an unpredictable atmosphere. The town has struggled with drug issues, property crime, and a general sense of lawlessness. For many people passing through the area, Niland is a place to avoid after dark, a dusty desert town at the edge of nowhere where the American dream came to die by a poisoned sea. Number 1, Cairo, Illinois. The buildings are still standing. That's what strikes you first about Cairo, Illinois. The downtown is still there, grand brick buildings, ornate cornices, wide sidewalks designed for crowds, but the windows are boarded up, the doors are chained, and the streets are empty. This isn't a town in decline. This is a town that died. At the southern tip of Illinois, where the Mississippi and Ohio rivers meet, Cairo was once one of the most important river towns in the Midwest. Its location made it a major transportation hub. By the early 1900s, Cairo was a busy commercial city filled with hotels, shops, and river traffic. At its peak, more than 15,000 people lived here. Today, the population is roughly 1,400, about 90% decline. What happened? The river economy declined, rail routes changed, industries left. Then came repeated floods, racial tensions in the 1960s and 70s, and a long period of economic collapse that the town never recovered from. Entire city blocks are now abandoned. Buildings that once housed department stores, theaters, and restaurants stand empty, their interiors gutted by time and weather. Some neighborhoods feel less like struggling communities and more like open-air ruins. The numbers are staggering. Of the town's roughly 1,100 housing units, nearly 400 sit vacant. The poverty rate is approximately 21.5% to 26.9%. The median household income is about $35,000. Locals in southern Illinois often say there's simply no reason to stop in Cairo anymore. Not because it's dangerous, though. Crime rates remain elevated, but because so much of the city has simply disappeared. Cairo isn't just a town in decline. It's a place that lost most of its population, most of its economy, and never found a way back. And for many people who live nearby, it stands as one of the clearest examples of what happens when a town is slowly left behind.